Hey everybody, welcome to the webinar. If you're joining us on our YouTube channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button for lots of helpful features. We are um, planning on doing these webinars monthly. This is the first one we've done for 2021, but we'll be coming out with them monthly, covering a range of different topics. So first of all, by way of introduction, my name is Caleb Canal. I'm one of the application engineers for SpatialAnalyzer, and I live in East Texas, born and raised in Tyler, Texas, all my life, and I've been working with SpatialAnalyzer for about 7 years now. Started in 2014 with the company. My background is engineering, mechanical engineering from LeTourneau University, and worked for about 10 years in industry as a manufacturing and industrial engineer. And now I have the awesome opportunity of helping people learn how to use our software better and get to travel all over the country to do that. So I really like SpatialAnalyzer software, and I hope that as you learn more about it, you will as well. Our goal today is to just talk about what it takes to get started in SpatialAnalyzer. So SpatialAnalyzer is a portable metrology software that's been around for a long time. But if you're new to it, you may find that you have a few challenges getting started and you just want some help knowing where to look and knowing how to get started. So that's what we're going to cover today. But before we do that, I just wanted to show you guys our website. So you can see here on the screen, we've got our website up, which you can find at kinematics.com. That's a great place for everything SpatialAnalyzer related for you to find and download and get support, and anything that you need related to the software is going to be at kinematics.com. So first of all, if you need to download the software, you can see right there in the top right-hand corner, there's a little button to download SpatialAnalyzer. We have between 4 and 5 releases a year, and we're always coming out with great new features and helpful updates. So if you need to download the latest version, you can do that. As long as your maintenance is current, you always have access to the latest version of SpatialAnalyzer. Also, right below the Downloads tab, importantly too, if you'd like to participate in our beta program, a lot of the new features that we release are available first in our beta program, so you can download that and get access to the latest updates and improvements, and also help us with feedback if you see anything that needs to be fixed or changed in those beta releases as well. So check those out. Right down below the download tab is our training tab. So if you're here and this getting started with SpatialAnalyzer is appealing to you, then you probably could use a little bit of training. I don't think this 30-minute update is going to get you 100% in the game as far as being able to use the software at its greatest possibilities. So if you need additional training, I encourage you to go to that link and go to our website and click on that link for training. Right now, we are scheduling classes for both our intro and advanced levels of training. If you'd like to take the intro class, which is if you're new to SA, would be really recommended. The next one is coming up in Williamsburg, and it's going to be March 23rd through the 25th. We also have one in April in Dallas, Texas. That's going to be April 27th through the 29th. Now, if you've been using SpatialAnalyzer for a while and you're pretty familiar with how everything works, then you might want to take one of our advanced classes. And the advanced class is to show you all the advanced features of using SpatialAnalyzer. And we have that coming up May 11th through the 13th in Dallas, and June 22nd through the 24th in our Williamsburg, Virginia headquarters location. So those are the two basic levels of class that we offer, the intro and advanced. Highly recommend intro, even if you've been using SpatialAnalyzer and you've never taken an intro class before. I guarantee you'll get a lot of good, helpful information out of it. So recommend the intro class. And definitely, if you've been using SpatialAnalyzer for any amount of time, the advanced class will be helpful to you as well. Typically, what we recommend is if you're taking the intro class, start using SpatialAnalyzer for a month or several weeks before you go to the intro class. If you have access to your instrument and SpatialAnalyzer, definitely recommend. That'll give you some great questions that you can ask before you even go to the training. So we recommend a little bit of familiarity with it if you can. And then anywhere from 3 to 6 months later, we recommend taking the advanced class. So the advanced class deals with a lot of topics that if you haven't taken the intro or if you're new to SA, you may not know exactly where to place that new information that we're going to provide to you in the advanced class. So we recommend that as well. And then finally, there's another level of Spatial Analyzer, which we call measurement plans. And that is a scripting or automation language that's available in the software. So everything that you do in the software by clicking with a mouse is also accessible by creating a script, or a measurement plan is what we call that. And for those advanced users that have been using SA for a while, and they also have a process that's a pretty well-defined process, we recommend the measurements plan class, and that will really help you to automate your entire process in the software. Our measurements plan class is also being offered a couple of times this year. The first one is going to be next week, actually, in Everett, Washington, March 16th through the 18th. And then we're also going to be offering it in November 2nd through the 4th in our Williamsburg headquarters location. So if you'd like to know any more about all of those training classes, please find us on the web at kinematics.com. Click on that training link. You'll see all the information that you need to sign up and register for those classes. And then the last thing I want to direct you to, if you're new to our software, is that support link on our website. So if you're looking for help in SA, if you're just getting started, you're probably going to have a lot of questions, which you may feel are just really simple, easy, maybe quick questions that you don't want to bother anybody with. But that's what our support team is here for. My entire role with Spatial Analyzer is just to support our customers, to make them as successful as they possibly can be with the software. So if you send an email to our support team, it's simply support@kinematics.com. You can also email me directly, caleb@kinematics.com. Anytime you email us or contact us, we will get back to you as soon as possible with an answer on those questions. We also have a team of application engineers around the US and around the world that are available almost all hours of the day. So if you really need help and you're lost and you're working a third shift, send us an email, support@kinematics.com, or leave us a voicemail and we'll get back with you on that as soon as possible. So highly recommend our support if you have any questions. And then the last thing that I want to direct you to on our webpage here is our SA community. That's also in the top right-hand corner up there, right next to the downloads tab. And that SA community is a site where you can find FAQs, help articles, a lot of really helpful information to get you started in SA, or even if you've been using SA for a long while, you might just Google some of the terms that you're used to using, like relationship fit or USMN, in that SA community and find a wealth of information about how to improve the use of those functions and commands in Spatial Analyzer, how to get more out of your seat of software. So definitely do that. And then if you haven't already, sign up to get in touch with us. You'll be on the list for emails that let you know when we're going to be hosting these webinars once a month, but you'll also be in there to know when we're coming out with a new software release. So just a little teaser here. We have a beta that's posted right now. That's what we call a release candidate. That means it's very close to being a final release. So in the next few weeks, you should see a new release of Spatial Analyzer coming out really soon. So I encourage you to check that out and also follow us on our Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn if you'd like to know more about what we're doing and where we're going to be. So I'm really excited as we sort of come out. Everybody's getting vaccinated. Everybody's getting healthy again. I'm really excited to be able to start traveling more and seeing more customers in person and face-to-face. But in the meantime, you can also find us online where we can set up Microsoft Teams meetings. If you're still not able to host visitors in your site, we can do virtual meetings. We can do meetings over Skype or WebEx or Teams or whatever platform works for you. We would love to help you out with any questions or particular jobs, programs that you're going to be doing. So please let us know how we can help you. That's all I got to start us off. Now let's get started with Spatial Analyzer. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my software here. And now that I've got that brought up, I just want to tell you a little bit about the interface that you're seeing here. So if you've been using SA for a long time, you're probably familiar with our classic interface, which is not what you're seeing here. This is an interface that we call the Ribbons menu. And Ribbons was released several years ago, 2 years ago. And it is just a refresh of the user interface for Spatial Analyzer. So as we get started with SA, it's important to know how these ribbons are laid out. And also, if you start Spatial Analyzer and you're not seeing this ribbons menu, it's real easy to switch between the ribbons menu and what I refer to as the classic interface. So in order to get to the classic interface, you can select this options button here. And oh, I see that my dialog window is not popping up now, which is not very helpful. But you'll see when you click on this options menu, you will see a options menu, and then there's just a checkbox in there for show ribbon bar. And if you'll select that, then you'll be able to show the ribbon bar, and you'll have to restart Spatial Analyzer, and then that ribbon menu will show up just like this. So let's take a look at each of these individual tabs. We won't go through all of them, but I just want to show you where the things are that if you're used to using a metrology software, you might be looking for them in the interface. So first of all, Spatial Analyzer is a portable metrology software, and we specialize on the portable side of the metrology world. So there are lots of great companies out there that offer all kinds of different softwares for portable and stationary, but right now Spatial Analyzer just focuses on the portable metrology world. So that includes instruments like, let's take a look, laser trackers, something like this, or like this, or like this. Those are laser trackers, which you're probably familiar with. We also make several interfaces for portable CMMs, and a portable CMM is typically like an articulated measurement arm, something like this, or like this. And then there's a whole bunch besides arms and trackers. There are, oh, I can see that you're not seeing that dialogue either. My apologies for this webinar. Just trying to share my screen here, and we're not seeing those dialogues up there. So I'll just continue on. Spatial Analyzer is for portable metrology like laser trackers and arms. And then we also support a wide variety of other metrology instruments like photogrammetry systems, large room scanners, theodolites and total stations, laser projectors, and even the laser radar is another type of metrology instrument that we connect with. So all of those are portable metrology instruments, and it's really important for Spatial Analyzer because we're such a portable focused metrology software. It's really important for us to be able to provide you with the best possible type of alignments for your situation. So I'm just going to go ahead and add an instrument here to Spatial Analyzer, and I'm going to pick the ATS 600 because I was working with one of those this week. And you'll see the instrument shows up right here in the interface in Spatial Analyzer. Now, just real quick on these tabs here, we've got the Home tab, which sort of co-locates a lot of the most frequently used commands in Spatial Analyzer. And that's the real advantage to having the ribbons menu as opposed to the classic menu, classic interface. The ribbons menu takes you out of those real deep multi-step menus where you have to get to the command that you're looking for by going through several layers of menus. And then if your mouse kind of slips off the dialog, you might lose your place there and you have to go back to selecting it. With ribbons, we try to put everything sort of co-located with similar functions. And then we also make it really easy so that the most frequently used things, there's a big, large graphical button that you can click on and just select it. So with the Home tab, this is where you're going to see all your visibility controls. So this is where you're going to switch your model from wireframe to solid. You can change your background colors. You can even change the colors of items in your job file. The navigation here for zooming to the extents of your job file, rotating around a specific point in the job file so that as you rotate, you can see how Spatial Analyzer works, and then the additional mouse buttons here. So let's talk about really quick, before we move on with the ribbons menu, how the mouse works. So if you're using a typical 3-button mouse with scroll wheel, your left mouse click is going to, when you click and drag, is going to create a zoom window. So you'll be able to zoom in just by left clicking and dragging a window around it. You can also zoom out just by using the scroll wheel, by scrolling down to zoom out and scrolling up to zoom in. So that's a really easy way to navigate. And then the right click button is going to rotate your job file around. So right click to rotate, left click to create a zoom window. And then the last one that most people will use on a 3-button mouse is the center mouse button. So if you're looking at a scroll wheel and you have a scroll wheel and a center mouse button, then you can click that scroll wheel to pan. So as I hold down my scroll wheel, I can pan, and then I can easily zoom in or out. Let's give ourselves a little bit more information to work with here. I'm going to go ahead and open up a sample file in SpatialAnalyzer that I've prepared ahead of time with some information already in it, and I don't want to save any changes there. So navigating SpatialAnalyzer is really easy to do. It just takes a few minutes to get used to how to drag and zoom in and select the things that you're looking for. Use the scroll wheel to zoom out. Another thing that people can get really good at as you use it for a second is when you'd like to zoom into a specific area, wherever you hold your mouse point, that's where you're going to zoom into. So for instance, if I want to see this detail and a little bit closer, if I hold my mouse wheel over that selection, I can zoom right into that selection. Furthermore, if I want to see something on this side, then I can zoom out from this side, and it will zoom out from the place where your mouse is too. So as you zoom out from this direction, you can see that more of this side comes into view. And then as you zoom in, it's the exact opposite. It's going to center more on where your mouse is. So SA is really easy to navigate from a mouse standpoint. And if you don't like the direction of the scroll in, scroll out wheel, that is one of the options that's adjustable for you. So you can change that in our user options, which I won't show you now because the user options dialog is not showing on my screen when I bring that up. So navigating in SA is super easy with a 3-button mouse. You can zoom in and you can select, you can zoom in to the area that you select with your mouse. Really easy to do. So moving on here, I did mention the surface rendering modes here. We've got wireframe and solid. And if I render this model solid, you can see that we go where we can see a full color on the model, and it is a solid. It's actually a collection of surfaces. It's still actually hollow in the middle, but that's generally how most metrology softwares works. So that's the Home tab. There's a lot more stuff that happens in here. Here's one more thing that you might find useful. These are your preset views. So if you'd like to navigate to a preset view, you can do that using this little blue cube with the yellow top on it. There's a series of preset views, and then you can make up all of your own preset views as well. Also in SpatialAnalyzer, the right-click menu is really well fleshed out. So if you need to perform any type of editing on an object, the right-click menu is a great way to do that. So let's say, for instance, I don't want my instrument to be showing in this job file. I can just right-click on it and toggle the Show command. And now when I zoom to the extents of my part, you can see that it's just my CAD file that's in here. So right-click is also really helpful. And there's a lot of commands that you can get to just by right-clicking on the object that you want to use. I'll also mention over here in the left-hand side is what we call the tree bar. So if you're used to any type of CAD modeling software, or really any design and engineering software, you're used to the idea of a tree bar. So everything that's in the graphics window here has a place in the tree bar, and they're all separated into their unique categories. So we've got a category for instruments, which is right here. We've got a category for point groups. That's these little sets of points that are each different colors in the window here. So each one of these points is in its own point group, and the point groups are uniquely identified by both a name and a color. So we've got a category for point groups. We've also got a category for frames. As you use SpatialAnalyzer more, you'll realize how important frames are. Let me just show that working frame right there. So in SpatialAnalyzer, being a portable metrology, having the ability to create and use different frames is really critical in the software. So a frame is just an origin and an orientation. So right now you can see that this frame has an origin, which is at 0.000, and then it has an X, Y, and Z orientation. And that frame tells us where X is positive, Y is positive, and Z is positive, and where the 0 for all those values is, where they all intersect. But this is not the only frame that's possible in this job file. For instance, if you work in aerospace, you're probably familiar with airplane coordinates, and that's where your frame starts at the nose of the airplane and it continues back. And on that airplane, you've got a water line, which is typically your Z. You've got a butt line, which is typically your Y, and then you've got a station, which is typically your X value. So having that airplane coordinate system is really helpful if you're bringing in a lot of CAD, and you need them to all be oriented to each other. But each one of those individual parts could also have its own frame. So when you output the coordinates of, let's say, this circle here on the screen, it's helpful if those coordinates are in our part frame rather than maybe our large assembly frame. So SpatialAnalyzer has supports multiple dozens or thousands of frames in each job file. But you can see that it also, it's important that the frames, that there's one frame that's the active frame, and that'll be your reporting frame. So all of these features could have their own unique reporting frame as well. So there's a category for frames. We only have one right now. And then the final category that we have in our job file here is for our surfaces. And you can see that these surfaces are just two here. We've got one called the base and one called the vertical. Let me show you a little trick about using the tree bar. And that's if you want to identify something in the tree and you want to be able to highlight that in the graphics area so that you can be sure which one you're pointing at in the tree. For instance, if I just opened this file and I didn't know which one of these was base and which one was vertical, I could find that out one of two ways. I could right click on the vertical and say, show me that item in the tree. And you can see that it highlights vertical here in the tree, which is really helpful. But if I've got a whole lot of parts and maybe I know exactly the point group name that I'm looking for and I want to see which one of those is represented in the graphics area, then I can right click down here in the white space below my tree and I can select enable hover mode. And that's a new feature that we've released in the last year that allows you to hover over different items in the tree. And as you hover over them, they will highlight in the graphics window. So for instance, I want to see, let's see, what are we referring to here by this point group datum A? And you can see that as I hover my mouse over datum A, these points that are now red will highlight to the highlight color, which is black. So that's a really cool feature to help you see all of the items that are in your tree and to highlight them as you pass your mouse over them. So that's the instrument tree. That's the job tree, the tree bar that's over here. And then the next thing, other window that's pretty typical in SpatialAnalyzer is the report bar. And the report bar is a way to get information about an item that's in the job without having to open its properties or anything like that. So let's say, for instance, I want to know all of the points and their names and their XYZs for datum A. Simply click on datum A and I can see that all of these points right here are the points that make up that datum A point group. So they each have a name, they're called datum A followed by some number that's on there, and they each have an XYZ value. Now, here's another thing that's really cool, and a lot of people may not know this if you haven't done it before, but if you hold down the Shift key and you drag a box around any set of information in the report bar, it will copy that to the clipboard. So as I hold down the Shift key and I drag around these points, I've now copied them to the clipboard. So let's say I bring up Notepad and I can paste them in the Notepad. And I know you can't see my screen right now. You can't see my Notepad right now, but I've now pasted those points in the tab delimited format in Notepad. The other cool thing about that is if you want to put more points into SpatialAnalyzer, you can simply go to the construction tab and construct new points from points, and you can paste those points right from the clipboard. So this is really helpful for customers that might be given a set of data or control points from somebody in an email or maybe in an Excel file. All you have to do is copy those to your clipboard in Windows and then select construct new points from points and set paste points from clipboard. When you do that, a dialog will open and it will walk you through arranging the formatting of those points into different columns. So typically they're name XYZ, but there's a lot of different information that can be imported with points. You may have an IJK vector, you may have a group name and then a point name. So the dialog will walk you through all the steps of being able to do that. So that is working in the tree and using the report bar down here. You can also see that I can get report information on surfaces. If I click on them. Oh, I guess surfaces don't show up down there, but my world frame shows up and it gives me my transformation matrix for my frame and then my instrument. If you select your instrument, it will tell you the instrument's location, but it also tells you all of the observations on data that that instrument has made. So this is a quick way to grab all the data that was measured with a specific instrument all at once. So that's a little bit about the graphics window in SA, how to navigate, what shows up over here in the tree, and how to use this report bar. So let's move on to the instrument tab. And just like I did before, I'm just going to go to add an instrument, and I'm just going to select whatever instrument that I have in my possession so that I can connect to it. And then the next step for instruments is just going to be clicking on connect. So if you're connected to an instrument, you know that you need to physically connect to that using a cable, or you can also connect over Wi-Fi for many metrology instruments that are available now today. If you ever have any trouble connecting to an instrument, you can definitely give us a call, but we have also taken the liberty of putting all of our instrument quick start guides right here in the instrument tab. So I know you won't be able to see this dialog as I open it, but if you click on that instrument button right there, it will bring up a PDF with all of the quick start guides for all of the instrument interfaces that are available to you in SpatialAnalyzer. So that's a great way, if you have any questions about getting connected, or if you're connecting to an instrument for the first time, to get all of the details about how to physically connect to that instrument or connect to its Wi-Fi, and then how to start the interface in SA. Some instruments require that you set an IP address specifically for it. Some instruments require that you save a Java runtime environment, which is another communication protocol that's used to connect to instruments. And so just knowing how to do that can be a little bit challenging, which is why we've put that instrument help menu together right there in the instrument tab. So the next thing that you're going to do when you get started with SA, once you've added your instrument to your job file, is you're just going to connect to that instrument. So if I click on connect, if I've got multiple instruments in the job file, I'm just going to select that instrument, and it's going to try to connect to the instrument. Now, a little behind the scenes here, from my home in Tyler, Texas, I don't have an instrument set up here, and I'm not actually connected to one. But the good thing is SpatialAnalyzer figures that out pretty quickly, and then it will note that, hey, maybe you weren't intending to connect to an instrument. Maybe you just like to run that instrument in simulation. So for people like me that are used to training on SpatialAnalyzer, running an instrument in simulation is pretty helpful. But for beginning users, most of the time running an instrument in simulation is not going to be all that useful to you. So let's see. Well, did not pop up the interface. Oh, because you're not able to see my screen here. Hang on just one second. Let me see if okay, there we go. So now once the instrument interface, and this is a simulated instrument as I mentioned, once the instrument interface is up and running in SpatialAnalyzer, there's really three important things that you need to do before you start measuring with a tracker or an arm in SpatialAnalyzer. So first of all, we're connected to a tracker, but if you were to connect to an arm, let me do this as well. I want to show you what the arm interface looks like. It's going to look slightly different. There we go. So now I've got two different interfaces up here together. So the one on top is my tracker interface, and the one right below that is my arm interface. So you may not know, but SpatialAnalyzer has the ability to measure with multiple instruments simultaneously into the job file. So this can be really helpful if you have multiple instruments. If you need to set up on a large inspection job, you can set up multiple instruments, 5, 6, however many you have in your arsenal, and you can connect to all of those instruments simultaneously and be bringing all of that data into the software simultaneously. Another way where people use this quite frequently is to set up an arm and a tracker together in order to form like a measurement pair. And the way that that helps out is a laser tracker has really long distances that it can measure over, but an arm doesn't have to have line of sight in order to see things. So if you're measuring a part where you might have to measure inside of a cover or down below a surface, setting up a tracker to see a long distance and setting up an arm in that region where you need to see those out of line of sight items can be really helpful. And the way that most people do that is they'll measure 3 points with a tracker, and they'll measure those same 3 points with an arm, and then they'll both be tied into the same reference frame in SpatialAnalyzer, and then all the data is coordinated together in the software. So this is the laser tracker interface. And I want to tell you the 3 things that you need to remember before you start measuring with a laser tracker in SpatialAnalyzer. And that's that every point has to have a name. SpatialAnalyzer needs to know what target you're using, and it also needs to know what method you're using to measure. So it's name, target, and method. And those 3 things you should be aware of each time you press the measure button in SpatialAnalyzer. So let's start with target name. The first thing that you're going to have here to be able to set the target name is to click in this box right here. So right now it's telling us that, and I know the text is probably really small on the screen that you're looking at, but don't worry about that. It says plane, and then there's 2 colons, and then it says P8. And that means that as the next point that I measure here is going to go into a group that's called plane, and then it's going to call that next point P8. So if you wanted to change the group or the point name that you're measuring, all you need to do is just click on the group here, and you'll have a dialog that pops up where you can type in the group name and the target name. So the name of each point is kind of like an address. Every point has to have a collection, a group, and a target name. And you can think of that as like the point's address. Just like your address has to have a city, a street, and a house number. So if you think of a city, you can have multiple different streets named Broadway, but most of the time you won't have multiple Broadways in one city. So if you have a city, that's kind of like your collection. You can have a city with a point group called Broadway, and then you can have a target named P1, but you can't have 2 P1s in the same group. Just like you wouldn't really want to have 2 house numbers with the same number on the same street. If they're on different streets, that's fine. That's like different groups. And if they're in different cities, that's fine. That's like different collections. But those 3 things, those 3 parts of the target name are really important. The collection, the group, and the target name. And if we look over at our tree here, we'll see that we've got a collection, which is collection A, and that's just a way of organizing our tree. And under that collection, we've got point groups. And in those point groups, we've got one called datum C, and then we've got a target called datum C underscore P277. So that gives that point a unique name, and it also lets us know that all of the points in this group called datum C, all of those are related in some way. So those points are all related because they all make up the measurements on datum C. So that's the first thing. When you take a shot in SpatialAnalyzer, all of your data needs to have a name. The next thing that you need to tell SpatialAnalyzer is what target you're using. So in a typical laser tracker situation, you should probably be familiar with a 1.5" SMR. So if you take a look at the 1.5" SMR right here on my screen, That is a spherically mounted retroreflector. That's a steel, usually ball, with 3 mirrors in it that all meet at a certain point. And if you use the laser tracker at all, you should be familiar with an SMR. So this SMR is an 1.5" SMR, and that's going to be the target. So if you're using another probe like a V probe or a 6 probe or a T probe, you'll select that. And if you're using a 1/2" SMR, you'll select that. So that's the target. The last thing that you need to know before you take a point with the laser tracker is what measurement method you're using. And SpatialAnalyzer is set up to take points in multiple different ways with laser trackers. So you can take a single point, you can take a stable point, or you can take a spatial scan. So using different measurement methods is how that data is going to be collected into the software. So those 3 things, the target name, the target that you're using, and the measurement method all look like this in the laser tracker interface. A little bit different on the ARM interface because most ARMs don't have multiple different probes that you can use. So this ARM is going to also have the dialog where you can put in the target, but the probe tip is going to be selected for you because most of the time on the newer ARMs, they will automatically recognize what probe tip is attached to them. And then of course with the ARM, you've got a few different measurement types, measurement profiles, and that's a single point, a scan, and then a point scan, and then a laser tracker, which will then bring in cloud points. So before you take any measurement with your instrument in SpatialAnalyzer, you'll want to check the target name, the target, and the measurement method that you're using. And I realize that I'm already running over my time now for our 30-minute webinar, but I want to just talk about one more thing in SpatialAnalyzer, and that is working with CAD. So if you're used to using CAD, or if you have CAD from your customers, it's really easy to bring that CAD into SpatialAnalyzer. So if I click on the menu item over here, I can select import and then auto import. And then from there, I can select any of the major CAD types that are available to you. So we support all kinds of different CAD types, but all of the major ones are supported in there. So all you need to do is select the CAD, and SpatialAnalyzer will bring in all of the CAD surfaces as well as any additional annotations or anything like that that comes in with the CAD. So here's another part here. Let me just hide a couple of these things. And now you can see our CAD part here. So really quick to get you started in SpatialAnalyzer, if you were to want to inspect this part using the new ribbons menu, we have a fantastic workflow that now allows you to select these features on your CAD model and measure them in the software. So let's just say I wanted to measure this plane here. I'm going to say I want you to detect that nominal from the CAD. And I'm going to pick plane, and in this case, since I'm going to also measure circles, I'm going to make that my projection plane. So I select projection plane, and then I just click on this large flat surface here, and now I've got a plane to measure, and I've also set that as my projection plane. The next step is to select any items that you want to measure on your part. So let's go ahead and pick a slot, and we'll select that slot. And you can see as I do it, the software recognizes the nominal slot there and generates that. And then let's go ahead and measure some circles. So we'll do that large circle and then these circles on the outside edges here. All right, and then finally, the last thing I'm going to do is not going to be using a projection plane, but I'm going to measure some additional planes on my part here. So I'm just going to pick the plane feature and select these planes just like this. So now that I've gone through and I've selected all the features that I want to measure, one thing that I have on here that's not a geometric feature is this large sort of organic shape here. And this is not a cylinder or a cone or something like that, but I could still want to measure points to that space, and I would do that by using what's called a groups to CAD faces type relationship. So I'll select that, and I don't have the group measured yet, so I'll hit enter, and then I'll pick this CAD face right here. Now, what you may have noticed is that as I was clicking all of those features, the circles and the planes and the slot, SpatialAnalyzer was creating a task list for me over here in the inspection bar. And if you don't see that inspection bar, you can just right click up here next to tree bar, and you can check that box for inspection bar. And that will bring up your inspection bar. Now I've got all of the items ready to measure in here, and all I need to do is just double click on the item in order to begin trapping to, is a sort of an old metrologist term, trapping to that relationship. And then all of the data that I measure will go into making that plane, making that slot, making that circle. So that's as far as we're going to go today. I just want to remind you that the main things that you want to focus on when you're measuring with a tracker or an arm are the target name, the target or reflector that you're using, and the measurement profile. And once you've selected those, you're ready to go ahead and start measuring. So I know that you probably have some more questions. If you're new to SpatialAnalyzer, you can find us on the web at kinematics.com. And if you have any questions about today's presentation, please email me, caleb@kinematics.com. Also, all the time, our support@kinematics.com email address is available. And then finally, if you'd like to know more about our software, schedule an appointment with us, and you can do that by emailing me directly as well, caleb@kinematics.com. Thank you so much for joining us on our webinar today. I know we went through a lot of stuff really quickly. Please join us on all of our webinars monthly. And in order to find out when we'll be hosting those, they'll be the first Friday of the month. And you can sign up for those on our website as well, so you'll get a notification when we're going to meet the next time. That's all I've got today. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and hope this has been helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions.